Welcome to ProKitchen University, an online video tutorial series, version 11.06. This video is a demonstration of creating specialty ceiling features. We will address how to create a tray ceiling, a coffered ceiling, and an arched or barrel ceiling. Specialty ceilings and ceiling features are a common design feature that add extra interest and elegance to a space. These features, however, are a common design challenge due to the fact that there is no pre-built option to create the visual of the desired ceiling. In this video, we will explore how to create these features by utilizing user shapes. Please note, the ceiling features demonstrated in this video are only a few applications of the process and may be adapted to create many different ceiling shapes and features. Before we begin adding the tray, coffered, and arch barrel ceiling elements, we must first adjust the wall height of the room. This will be adjusted in the design settings. Navigate to the design settings icon found on the toolbar that appears as a blue circle with a gear inside, and left-click to launch the dialog box. In this dialog box, if you are just starting the design, enter all the pertinent job details as you normally would. When you arrive at the Construction tab, adjust the wall thickness, zone width, and wall item alignment as usual. For the wall height field, we must adjust the wall height to reflect the value of the highest point of the ceiling. For instance, in this room, the wall height will end at 96 inches, but the highest point of the ceiling will be at 108 inches. So the value I will need to enter will be 108 inches. If you had previously drawn your walls for this room, you may apply the new parameters by placing a mark in the box next to Apply to Existing Walls before hitting the OK button at the bottom right corner of the dialog box. If you have not yet drawn your room, do so now as per usual. Now that the walls are at the appropriate height, we may create the ceiling feature. It may be a good idea to create elevation views for each wall in the room before we begin. Either right-click on the wall, head to the wall number, into the toolbox and select Inside Elevation, or left-click the wall once, then select the elevation icon on the toolbar. Let's begin with the tray ceiling, in which there is a portion of the ceiling that is dropped along the perimeter of the room. For this, we will need a user shape. Navigate to either the doors or windows icons on the toolbar, and left-click to launch a dialog box. Select the User Shapes folder. Making your selection here will depend entirely on a couple of factors. First, how will this item move? Floor user shapes can move anywhere within the space and may be moved in all directions: left, right, up, down, and in, out. Wall user shapes can only move in two directions: left, right, and up, down, and will always have the back of the item attached to the face of a wall. The second factor to consider is, on which axis will I need to make my edits? Floor user shapes can only be edited on the horizontal axis from the plan view, while wall user shapes may only be edited on the vertical axis from the elevation view. For the tray ceiling, I will choose the floor user shape in case I need to make any edits on the horizontal axis. Once selected, click the Place button and left-click once to drop it in any wall zone on the plan view with a left click, and left-click again to secure. When the dialog box reappears, left-click Cancel to dismiss. User shapes by default will be a 24 by 24 half-inch thick piece of auburn wood. To alter this item into the 24 wide, 12 high drop ceiling that runs the length of the wall, access Attributes with either the right-click menu or with a double left click. In the Attributes dialog box, in the General tab, we may now make the appropriate dimension changes. Width is the left-right dimension of the item along the face of the wall. I will enter the value of the wall length in this field. Height will reflect the vertical dimension and will be set at 12 inches. Depth is the distance from the back of the item into the room, and I will enter the desired 24-inch depth into the room. Next, I will want to adjust the texture. Click the Texture tab to open. For this demonstration, I will select Non-Wood, so I may use any of the installed or imported textures. Then move the mouse over and down to click the Select button. The Textures dialog box will appear, and you may either enter the sample name, number, or keyword in the search field at the upper left, or navigate the catalog tree. Left-click a texture sample to see a larger image in the preview panel to the right. Below the preview, you may rotate the sample, or click the Favorites button to save the texture for easy access later on. You will want to ensure that this texture is either a match to the wall texture or to the ceiling texture, depending on design needs. Once you are satisfied with your selection, click the OK button. Once both the dimensions and the texture have been altered, click the OK button in the Attributes dialog box to apply. Now we need to maneuver this user shape into the appropriate placement. Let's first move it up-down to sit flush with the ceiling. This will be most easily done in the elevation view. Select the user shape with a left click, and use the top or bottom fields now displayed below. The top field represents the top of the item in relation to the top of the wall, and should be entered as 0. The bottom field represents the bottom of the item in relation to the floor, and should be entered as a positive value reflective of the height of the wall minus the height of the user shape. Once the correct value has been entered, tap the Enter key on the keyboard. Moving this item left-right will be most easily done from the Plan view. Hover the mouse over the user shape here and left-click once to activate the left, center, and right dimension fields below. Adjust either the left or the right field to 0, then tap the Enter key on the keyboard to secure. To create the remaining areas of the drop ceiling around the exterior edges of the room, the easiest way to do so would be to simply copy and paste the remaining sections. Right-click on the user shape, hover into the toolbox, and select Copy. Then move the mouse into the next wall zone. Left-click once to drop the item. Move the item into place, and left-click again to secure. While the up-down placement will be correct, you may need to take a moment to adjust the left-right and in-out placement of the user shape. There will be an overlapping of the user shapes. However, this is a desirable circumstance. If we look at the 3D Live preview, we will see that the rendering does not display a seam, and the interior joint looks as it would in real life. If there had been no overlap, the rendering would have created a seam where the user shapes meet, and give a less than desirable visual. Repeat this process as necessary. If there are walls that are different in length than the first, return to Attributes to make the appropriate alterations. If the design calls for an additional drop ceiling on the interior of this shape, you may create it with another floor user shape. Make the appropriate alterations in Attributes as normal. However, with this item, since it will be placed in the center of the room, to move the item up-down, you will need to access the option from the right-click toolbox. Moving the item in relation left-right or in-out to the appropriate location will take just a little more effort to place correctly. For this, I will use the Line-to-Line Dynamic Dimension tool. Navigate to the Measurements and Comments tab and left-click the L to L icon. Move the mouse into the plan view and place the mouse at the face of the stationary user shape sitting along the wall. When the purple line displays, left-click once to start the measurement, then drag the mouse to the face of the user shape that needs to be moved. When an additional purple line that is parallel to the first appears, left-click again to create the dimension line. Repeat this process once more for one of the sides of the interior shape, remembering to start the line-to-line dimension on the stationary item and ending on the item you intend to move. To move this into its appropriate position, left-click the first created dimension line to select. It will become outlined in red, and now at the bottom of the ProKitchen window, the length field will be displayed. Enter the desired value, then tap Enter on the keyboard. Repeat this process for the remaining dimension line. Now, you may place lighting components on either the recessed ceiling area or on any of the drop ceiling areas, keeping in mind that if you place lighting components on the dropped portions, you will need to use the up-down tool to ensure they sit flush with the bottom of the user shapes. Now that we have created a tray ceiling, let's tackle a coffered ceiling. This specialty ceiling features multiple beams crisscrossed or patterned across the ceiling. Some coffered ceilings will have simple straight beams, and some may have decorative scalloping. If the coffered ceiling will be straight beams with no decorative scalloping, this may be created by using floor user shapes. Setting the attributes appropriately, moving the item with up, down, left, right, and copy paste, similar to how the tray ceiling was created. However, if there is a need to create scalloped beams, you will need to utilize wall user shapes so that we may edit the shape on the vertical axis. With wall user shapes, you will want to have elevation views created and available prior to bringing in the user shape for ease of placement. Create the elevation views as demonstrated earlier. Then navigate to the Architectural Elements catalog, this time selecting the wall user shape. After clicking Place, drop the user shape in the elevation view and left-click to secure. When the dialog box reappears, left-click Cancel. Next, navigate to the user shape's attributes and adjust the dimensions to reflect the appropriate height and width, with the depth to run the length of the room, and select the desired texture. Once the attributes have been adjusted, move this item up-down to sit flush with the ceiling, and left-right to sit flush with one of the walls. With the scalloped beams sitting along the side of the wall, we will only need to create the edits on the side exposed to the interior of the room. Right-click the user shape and select Edit from the toolbox. The outline will become red in color and there will be open circles at each corner. Similar to countertops and backsplash, user shapes will have the additional hidden right-click edit tools, one set each for lines and for points. For a more detailed demonstration on all the available edit tools, please visit the User Shapes video tutorial. First, we will need to create the additional levels of the beam using the additional right-click edit tools from the line. Hover the mouse over the bottom line of the shape, then right-click to open the menu. Here, we will want to select Extrude. Once selected, now, when we move the mouse, a new point will follow. This will be the start of the extrusion. Move the new point into position and left-click once to start. Now, without clicking the mouse again, move the mouse down and over, using the blue lines as the indicator of where the new section of the shape will appear. When you are happy with the height and width of the extrusion, left-click again to secure. If you need to make additional adjustments to the height or the width of the newly created shape, left-click once on the appropriate line, move the mouse, and left-click again to secure. Repeat as necessary. Currently, this shape has square corners. If these need to be softened, we will need to use the additional right-click edit tools available from the points. Hover the mouse over the point and right-click, this time selecting Notch to create a notch in the corner, Round to create a rounded corner, or Bevel to create a beveled clip. For this demonstration, I will choose Round to soften and round out all the corners of this shape. Once selected, move the mouse into the shape for exterior corners, or outside the shape for interior corners. As you move the mouse, you will see a preview of the curve. When you are happy with the rounded corner, left-click to secure. Repeat as necessary until all desired edits have been made. To release the Edit tool, tap the Escape key on the keyboard. When it comes to the beams that reside on the exterior of the room, copy and paste will not be an ideal option, since the edited edge will remain on the side in which they were created, and placing the copied item on the opposite wall face to invert the shape may lead to a problem with the 3D rendering. So it is suggested that you repeat this process for each of the beams that will sit on the edge of the room, using only 2 of the wall placement areas, preferably the north and east walls of the drawn space, for best visual representation. When it comes to the beams that will sit along the interior of the space, we may create the shape once, then copy and paste as necessary, this time creating the extrusion to the middle of the shape and making the edits on both sides. Once you are happy with the shape, tap the Escape key on the keyboard and copy and paste as needed to create the required amount of beams. But be aware that spacing these items will be best served when copying and pasting one at a time. Before I copy and paste the newly created beam, I will want to ensure proper placement. As you may see, I am not provided with user DIMs on the plan, and I will need to do some math for placement purposes. I want this first beam to be placed centrally to the room. The wall length is 210 inches, and I have 3 12-inch wide beams. 210 minus 36 equals 174. 174 divided by 2 is 87 inches for the space between the beams. Unfortunately, the line-to-line tool will not work for the wall user shapes, as the line-to-line tool does not recognize the wall user shapes in the plan view and will only create a static dimension line in the elevation view. Also, user shapes lack the position tool, so we will need to utilize the left, center, and right fields from the plan view to move this item into place, and requires a little more math. I will need to take 87 and add the 12 inches of the existing beam sitting along the wall to arrive at 99 inches from either the left or right end of the wall. Left-click the user shape from the plan view, activate the left or right field, type the appropriate dimension, and tap Enter on the keyboard. Now I can copy and paste this item to the east wall and move it to the matching left-right position. Continue to copy, paste, calculate appropriate left-right placement, and move the items into place until all the beams desired are present. The arched, vaulted, or barrel ceiling type will also require a wall user shape so that we may once again create edits on the vertical axis. For this particular specialty ceiling, we will only need to place a single wall user shape. Once the user shape has been placed and the Architectural Elements dialog box has been dismissed, head to Attributes. This time, the width will match the width of the wall it sits along. The height value will need to reflect the additional height from the foundation wall to the top of the arc, and the depth will reflect the entire depth of the room. Remember to adjust the texture of the item to reflect the desired texture of the ceiling before hitting the OK button. Once again, alter the up-down positioning to sit flush with the ceiling. and the left-right positioning to sit flush with the adjacent walls. To create the arched ceiling, once again, access the User Shapes right-click toolbox and select Edit. Then hover the mouse over the bottom edge of the user shape and right-click again. This time, select the Radius End option. After this tool has been selected, when you move the mouse, a preview of the arc will follow. This arc can be made towards the inside or the outside of the existing shape. Move the mouse up toward the ceiling until you are satisfied with the preview. Then left-click to secure. If you want to readjust the arc, left-click once on the new point at the apex of the curve. Then move your mouse into the new position and left-click to secure. When you have completed all desired edits, tap the Escape key on the keyboard to release the tool. And now you have an arched barrel vaulted ceiling the entire depth of the room. With a little extra time, your creativity, and Pro Kitchen's user shapes, the sky is the limit when it comes to creating magnificent and awe-inspiring ceilings. Thank you for visiting Pro Kitchen University. Be sure to visit us at prokitchensoftware.com.